The entertainer of the era, Frank Sinatra, who by his deeds and talents most exemplifies the tradition of the great Al Jolson.
Frank Sinatra was mainly known for his music and laid-back attitude on and off the stage. What we don't know, though, is that behind that confident swagger and impeccable style was a man who had an absolutely stunning car collection. So, to honor the man behind the music, join us as we take a tour of this legend's garage to prove that old Blue Eyes had an immaculate taste that extended beyond tailored suits and trilby hats. There are a couple of firsts that stick with you forever. Your first love, your first house, your first car, especially if the car was responsible for your big break. And with that, we begin our list. A 1942 Chrysler Convertible. Believe it or not, Sinatra's first big break with the group The Four Flashes back in the 30s wasn't because of his musical talents. Instead, it was because he had a car, a green Chrysler Convertible. With Sinatra's lovely Chrysler on board, the ensemble found booking appearances a lot easier. But Old Blue Eyes didn't stop there. Eventually, Sinatra went past The Four Flashes, began making a name for himself in the recording industry, but stayed true to his brand. He remained a Chrysler guy. So he upgraded to a 1942 Chrysler Convertible. The singer owned one of only 36,586 automobiles Chrysler managed to manufacture before it was all shut down by America's entry into World War II. Besides being a rare spectacle, the Chrysler Convertible had a design that screamed luxury. The Chrysler stood out for its timeless design, folding tops, curved lines, and chrome grille. A detail of Sinatra's Chrysler Convertible was a personalized license plate that read The Voice, and that wasn't the only personalization he had done. The singer also added some details to the interior, such as a hands-free telephone and a high-fidelity radio. Surely, the 1942 Chrysler Convertible was more than just a means of transportation for Sinatra. It was an extension of his style, and that was just the beginning. Before we slide into the next luxury vehicle, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, because we have a treasure trove of luxury collections you definitely don't want to miss. Next up, a 1955 Ford Thunderbird. The Thunderbird was easily one of Ford's most desirable early coupes, only befitting for Sinatra's status as a megastar. The 1950s was quite the decade for the singer. He just won his second Academy Award and was the most famous entertainer in the world. With all that fame came enormous wealth and an unquenchable thirst for automobiles. Continuing his preference for convertibles, the Thunderbird was one of Sinatra's most beloved cars, as evidenced by the many pictures of him posing in it and grinning from ear to ear. Aesthetically speaking, the Thunderbird was an absolute beauty from nose to tail, with its large chrome grille, color-coded hooded headlamps, hubcaps, and fog lamps. Originally priced at just under $3,000, the Thunderbird, considered lightweight at 2,981 pounds, had a 3-speed transmission and even reached a stunning top speed of 112 miles per hour. The Thunderbird was bought for Sinatra by Capitol Records and represented a return to the limelight for him after a worrying start to the decade. And there's no better way to say I'm back than cruising in a luxury V8 slice of American perfection. If there was anybody you'd expect cruising around in the most expensive production car of the 1950s, it would definitely be Sinatra, which brings us to the next vehicle in this singer's collection, the 1956 Continental Mark II. With Old Blue Eyes at the height of his fame and wealth, it was only right that a gearhead like him bought a car the world then considered the height of luxury. At this time, Sinatra had become the official leader of the Rat Pack, as the most celebrated member of this very exclusive LA social group that once included Errol Flynn and Humphrey Bogart. Surely, now more than ever, he needed to ride in luxury. This elegant hardtop coupe was priced at $10,000, more than the Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud and twice as much as a Cadillac. And Ford still reportedly lost money on every model sold. Famous for its upright spare wheel cover above its rear fender, the Continental Mark II was majorly hand-built, with meticulous hand-stitched interiors of rare Scottish leather, and subject to strict quality control inspections. The result of all this? A worthy successor to Ford's own Thunderbird. with a 368 cubic inch V8 engine producing about 285 horsepower. Talk about expensive taste, and Sinatra's taste only got more expensive from here. The Continental was back in the Lincoln lineup in 1958 thanks to the Mark II, which was quite fortunate though, because Cadillac had to respond. Keen to compete with Ford in the luxury coupe market, the El Dorado Brougham was introduced, a $13,000 dream machine that was one of the world's most elegant, distinctive, and advanced automobiles. This caddy was absolute flamboyance, a car more than worthy of cruising the Las Vegas Strip, where Frank Sinatra was a regular at venues. So, keeping up with his expensive style and taste, Sinatra went from a $10,000 Mark II to a $13,000 Cadillac. The car was decades ahead of its time, with features like power seats with memory, self-leveling air suspension, electric windows, dual-level climate control, and cruise control. It was the coupe to have in the 50s, although only 340 examples of this model were ever made. And Sinatra loved his so much that he didn't even stop at owning just one. Frank's El Dorado Brougham, on the other hand, was quite the beauty in burgundy with a gray and cream leather interior. Its glove box vanity set included a silver cigarette case and 6 shot-sized tumblers, items that would definitely be frowned upon today. In 2009, one ex-Sinatra Brougham was sold for an undisclosed price, but it was projected to sell as high as $375,000. There's no better car to sum up the golden age of American automobile manufacture. If one luxury vehicle in Sinatra's history of purchases is an ideal symbol of the excesses of the luxury of the 1950s, this is it. Fun, fast, flamboyant, and with flair to spare. But Sinatra's car collection was just getting started. The 60s came rolling in, and with it, a change in car designs. Next up, a 1965 dual Ghia L6.4. Sinatra didn't just want his rides to be expensive. He wanted them rare too, and the dual Ghia L6.4 checked both boxes. It was 1962, and the world had started seeing a significant change in car designs, from the geometrically shaped land yachts of the 50s to the curvier profiles with shorter wheelbases. Well, this was definitely true of the stunning dual Ghia L6.4, which was way more modest than 3 of Sinatra's previous cars, but no less expensive or exclusive. In Detroit, dual Ghia had pioneered the technique of hand-picking its owners, and Sinatra looked like an ideal match. The $13,000 Ghia remains one of the rarest car models ever, with only 26 manufactured, and most of them going to the biggest celebrities. Of course, Sinatra was going to snap one up. Like all of the singer's previous cars mentioned here, the Ghia was equipped with a V8 engine and a 383 cubic inch block producing up to 355 horsepower. It also had a 3-speed automatic transmission, and similar to Sinatra's Caddy, it had a 2+2 coupe seating configuration. There was still something rather odd and different about Sinatra's Ghia. The singer had George Barris, a celebrity customizer, install backup brake circuits and fuel pump, among other fail-safe features. Today, only 17 examples of this model remain. From all the previous vehicles on our list, one thing's clear. Sinatra fawned over the expensive and exclusive, and what could be more expensive than the world's first supercar? The 1969 Lamborghini Miura. Often touted as the world's first supercar, it is easy to see what drew the car connoisseur to fly all the way to Italy to get one in person. Despite all this, he most likely gave this beauty away almost immediately after getting it. At the time of launch, the Lamborghini Miura was the world's fastest production car, with a top speed of 174 miles per hour. Its 3,929cc V12 engine, the first of Sinatra's car collection, produced 350 horsepower and even had a manual 5-speed transmission. The singer's was the even more coveted S version, with luxury features like an overhead console, air conditioning, and an upright engine that could produce an extra 20 horsepower. To add to all this, Sinatra's Miura had quite the aesthetics, coming in his favorite color, Arancio Metallico, a type of orange, and with factory-fitted boarskin leather trim. With some models of this supercar going for as high as $1 million at auction, this, without doubt, was one of the most expensive vehicles that ever graced Sinatra's expensive garage. And it also checks the exclusive box for old Blue Eyes. as there weren't that many examples of the model in circulation. It will remain a mystery why Sinatra didn't hang on to this raging bull a little while longer, but he remained a big fan of Italian supercars, as evidenced by the next purchase. A 1970 Maserati Jibli. Although this supercar isn't as recognizable or collectible as the Lamborghini Miura, it still remained an effortlessly elegant automobile in its own right. It took 4 years before Sinatra made his next car purchase, an Italian sports car sold to him by his own son-in-law. The Jibli was way more low-key than the Miura, and honestly more stylistically in tune with the other supercars in Sinatra's collection, like the Ford Thunderbird and the Dual Ghia. For avid car connoisseurs, it shouldn't come as a surprise that the Jibli, meaning Desert Storm in Egyptian, bears so much resemblance to the Dual Ghia, as it was manufactured by some of the very same designers at the Ghia factory in Turin. The Jibli, much like the Dual Ghia, featured a long wheelbase and 2+2 seating configuration. Sinatra, this time, didn't want to go over the top with his customizations, so the singer went for an understated but ultra-stylish silver, with black leather trim and chrome accessories, as well as a few other notable features like front and rear servo-assisted disc brakes and pop-up headlamps. Powered by a V8 engine with a 288 cubic inch capacity that produced over 300 horsepower, the Jibli could go fast, reaching a top speed of up to 154 miles per hour. Its notoriety and of course performance attracted quite a few famous customers, including names like Peter Sellers and Sinatra's Rat Pack companion Sammy Davis Jr. Sinatra's own model of this beauty was later sold to actor George Hamilton. For a gearhead like Frank Sinatra, an exclusive car would be the perfect gift. Well, at least his fourth wife thought so, which brings us to the next car in the singer's collection, a 1976 Jaguar XJS V12. The XJS was produced in 1975 to serve as a replacement for the stunning Jaguar E-Type, and it did just that. The beautiful supercar was regarded as one of Jaguar's most recognizable sports cars from the mid-70s all the way to the 90s, and it's pretty easy to see why. Its broad double headlamp clusters and tapering rear buttresses impressed everyone who was someone back then. Besides all that, performance-wise, the XJS was an absolute powerhouse, with a 12-cylinder engine that propelled it to 150 miles per hour with a 0 to 60 time of 7.8 seconds. Barbara Max, Sinatra's fourth wife, saw the vision with this one and gifted a green example of this model to her husband as part of their wedding. Barbara knew her husband quite well, so this particular XJS was especially well appointed in true Frank Sinatra style. It had a high-end Panasonic radio system and an overhead console, and a primitive car phone by General Electric, both features that, for the time, were considered the height of in-car elegance. However, even with all of this, it was still possible that old Blue Eyes wouldn't have chosen to buy this European vintage for himself, mainly because it marked a departure from the Italian and US marques that he'd owned previously. Regardless of this, Sinatra had the XJS with him for 19 years, lasting almost as long as his fourth and final marriage. Knowing Sinatra's admiration for luxury saloons, as we've all come to learn, he, in turn, gifted his wife a Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow, both of which were auctioned together back in 2015. After being a Chrysler guy all his life, it finally paid off for Sinatra in the 80s when he received his very own initialed Chrysler Imperial FS Edition in '81. All that lifelong dedication finally came good. In fact, before this, he'd become quite tight with Chrysler CEO Lee Iacocca. Getting Sinatra his own Chrysler was more than just rewarding dedication. It was a last-ditch effort to restore the Imperial nameplate for a personal luxury coupe to compete with the Lincoln Continental Mark VI and Cadillac El Dorado. The Imperial FS Edition was a limited run that was even sold in blue to match Sinatra's eye color. It was also sold with a selection of Sinatra's favorite cassettes, so it was like you were on a cruise with the man himself. Sinatra not only gave his name and best records to the Chrysler Imperial FS Edition, he also owned one of his own, obviously, as well as helped out with its marketing. Well, in addition to all that marketing, the FS Edition was a pretty solid ride with a trusty V8 engine, like so many of the cars in Sinatra's collection. It also came with a deluxe leather interior, wooden trim, a space-age electronic instrument panel, and a large electric sliding sunroof so your head could be in the clouds while you drove. However, it came with one teeny sketchy fuel injector problem that's best left forgotten. Unfortunately, even with Sinatra's help, the FS Edition just didn't take flight. And with limited numbers sold, Chrysler had to discontinue the $20,000 model in 1983. Although the Chrysler Imperial FS Edition failed to light up the world like its namesake, it still remains a worthy tribute to the brand's biggest customer. With all the famous luxury brands on Frank Sinatra's roster of vehicles, one of the most exclusive brands remains notably absent from it all. Can you guess which? Rolls-Royce. However, he didn't stay without one. Next up, a 1984 RollsRoyce Cornish. Having gifted one to his last wife Barbara back in 1976, it only seemed right that the only Rolls-Royce he'd ever owned was also a gift. This time from Sammy Davis Jr. and Dean Martin, who gave it to him for his 70th birthday. After having quite the run with elegant hardtops, Sinatra was once again back where he started, with the wind in his hair in this stylish British convertible, emphasis on the word stylish. This 1984 Cornish came with a mason black bodywork and burgundy leather trim. It also had picnic tables to its rear and a matching set of crystal glasses and decanters, although it was only a two-seater. Now, how about a peek under the hood? Powered by an equally impressive fuel-injected OHV V8 engine, this 3-ton beauty can reach a top speed of 120 miles per hour. Despite this being a thoughtful gift, Sinatra eventually re-gifted the Cornish to his lifelong assistant, Ingemar Fredriksson, as one expensive thank you for his many years of loyal service. So what does Sinatra do next after gifting the Cornish away? Well, he caps it all off by coming full circle and returning to his Chrysler roots. That brings us to the final masterpiece in Sinatra's mouth-watering car collection, the 1985 Chrysler Town & Country. For Sinatra's bodacious and elegant style, it really doesn't get more modest than this station wagon, which, compared to the previous supercars, is definitely more befitting a man in his twilight years. An allegory for a legend who has nothing left to prove. The T&C, which was based on Chrysler's K-Car platform, is rumored to be the last car Old Blue Eyes ever drove before his sad demise in 1998. This station wagon was far from what Sinatra had cruised around in, equipped with a 3.6-liter Pentastar V6 engine. The engine on this guy can give you up to 283 horsepower. The interior was all basic and comfortable, with nothing over the top like we're used to with him. The perfect end to one of the grandest car collections ever. And there you have it, an all-around tour of Frank Sinatra's stunning car collection. From the highs of supercars and luxury convertibles to the lows of a station wagon, this wasn't only the details of Sinatra's cars. It was the details of a man whose style would live forever. To quote the legend's most memorable song, "Did It My Way." If you enjoyed this video and want to see more luxury collections, subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell.